Welcome to Design Thinking Games, a gaming and user experience podcast. Card-carrying UXers Tim Broadwater and Michael Schofield examine the player experience of board games, pen and paper role-playing games, live-action games, and video games. Play through the backlog on your podcatcher of choice and on the web at designthinkinggames.com.
We are talking about a history behind a certain type of subgenre of game, which is roguelike games. I know that I've played a handful of them before that we've talked about. Have you played any of these games or are familiar with the genre?
Yeah, I'm familiar with the genre a little bit. So roguelikes are not my cup of tea. The Binding of Isaac is famous, but I've never played it. So the ones that I've played are I think the biggest one, the most famous roguelike that I've played through is this older game that came out, I think 2010s, potentially earlier, but I think the early 2010s, called Faster Than Light, or FTL. But I play a lot of games that are, I don't know how we'd phrase it, roguelike. There are certain things around permadeath and reorientation and things like that are core parts of roguelike, and I've played a lot of games like that.
Mm-hmm. That's one of the things that I think is interesting about when we were talking about it. The definition for roguelike games are kind of all over the place, and we were looking a little bit kind of in the history of them. And, we are kind of throwing back 42 years at this point, looking at the 1980s, right? And, the term roguelike, to my understanding of it, was kind of a term that's taken from a type of game. And some of the games at that time were like Hack, Moria, Angband, and Rogue. And so the term rogue or roguelike specifically comes from the 1980 games Rogue. And that is, it's rocking the Commodore 64 or the Atari.
That's pretty early. Yeah. Yeah.
And the game itself is called Rogue, and it came out by Epix. I'm not sure. Are you familiar with the game?
I'm not. All of this stuff came out before me, Tim. Before I even existed.
Oh, that's right. How old are you? I
forgot.
I'm
I'm 36, so I'm 1985. So the games that,
I'm 77. So
so I started playing let's call it the 1990. At 5 is when I think those good video game memories really start taking root and go on. So, a lot of these early games definitely influenced
Intellivision or Atari. 100%. You're not familiar with them.
So I had an Atari, but my first real hundreds of hours gaming system was, the original Nintendo. And then from that, I went to Genesis, I think. And so my history kind of falls under those pipelines. But I had an early PC, and there's some category where games like Diablo is roguelike or roguelike, right? And so I feel that my deepest experience in this style of genre, although I've played several, is more in experiencing the games that are inspired from it, the second generation or third generation of games that came out of this kind of original design in the early to mid 80s.
Yeah, so there's it's interesting. Yeah, so let me describe it for you a little bit. There are a lot of PC games, and I think we've been kind of talking about this on Twitter a little bit. Because if you think of your kind of story-based text games, right, like King's Quest or Space Quest or games that are kind of from Ken and Roberta Williams, which, are kind of text games, and they worked on computers, and you could type in like open chest, hit enter, and it opens stuff. And then you could type in look around, and it'll kind of give you some description. So that's even like that's mid 80s, right? So like kind of when you were born. And if you kind of roll back a little bit before that, Rogue is like one of the first computer games, like I said, for Commodore 64 or kind of Atari. And to describe what it looks like, it is literally a screen that is made up of ASCII characters. So like, the American standard code for information interchange. So it's kind of like the ASCII art, or ASCII, if I'm saying that correctly. And so the map that you are exploring, like in the dungeon, literally is made up of hashtags and hyphens and ampersands and symbols. And so you, at the bottom, there's some text that tells you your level, how much gold you have, your hit points, experience, things like that. But you literally are just moving around. And as you're moving around, the environment that is made from hyphens and different character symbols is being generated. So procedurally generated, and that's kind of Rogue. And it also came out on the Tandy, I believe, as well. So, but it is a 1980 game, and the term roguelike comes from that game itself, Rogue, 1980 Epics. But to your point, like when you say roguelike games, there are, when people talk about, roguelike, I think there's general characteristics, but it's really vague, right? Permadeath, like you mentioned, is one of them, but randomly generated levels or creatures or maps, right? And so I think, I also think that kind of resource management is a piece of it as well. So I really think my mind goes more so, and I think this is probably what it is to most people, is that you go to randomly generated maps and monsters. And the restart or permadeath is something as well. And you kind of have to proceed with caution because you have to start over, if you die or fail.
Yeah, because I guess like for me, like the biggest takeaway of like the roguelike aspect is the permadeath. This is something where I feel like the idea that you have a character who can accrue resources. There's a deep resources management aspect to it, but then when you die, it's gone. All of your stuff is gone. And there's certain, there's certain cool ways where you might be able to go and get it back. However, it's that it's that sense of mortality, like and kind of like finiteness. That's not right.
No, I know what you mean.
That you don't. Saving your games and game over. And these kind of like things that as games get increasingly more forgiving, because as we kind of explore what the many different toggles and switches of the capital T, the player experience, some people don't want the sense of like mortal anxiety to be a part of their game. But that's the biggest takeaway from me. And I think if I think about it, the games that I have played are probably randomly generated. I know there's like a fine line of debate that, purists will say like the random generation is the roguelike part. Maybe more, but there's kind of like a scale.
I would agree. I think people say, oh, it's a roguelike game, or that's a roguelike game, or it's a roguelike game. And then you have mashups of multiple genres. I'm not a fan of roguelike games. I've played just a handful of them. However, when that genre is meshed up with other genres, I think it becomes really exciting. Design Thinking Games is a proud affiliate of Hunt a Killer. Enter the world of Hunt a Killer in their newest murder mystery season, Mallory Rock. This realistic murder mystery game delivers high-quality, handcrafted evidence that brings a fictional case to life. Can you solve a mystery with Hunt a Killer? Go to designthinkinggames.com/huntakiller or click on the banner at the bottom of our website. I know that we've recently talked a lot about Hades. Hades was nominated for a lot of awards. It is roguelike, meaning that, so basically you are the son of Hades, and you kind of find out that your dad kind of slept with Persephone, but Persephone is no longer in Hades anymore, or in hell. And so you're trying to escape Hades, or hell, to kind of reach your mom and just kind of find out what's going on. And, every time you die, and it doesn't matter if you are in Tartarus or you're in Elysium or like whatever part, like you're trying to get out of, of the underworld, you have to start over. However, like, I think one of the things that we see a lot in modern like roguelike games is that you can buy things or purchase things or advance outside of the run, quote unquote, the run, meaning the one attempt you get. And so
that's interesting. Sorry, a quick interjection. So that's a modern roguelike thing, right? That's like, or is that a convention that goes way back?
Yeah. So with Binding of Isaac, which is really actually a very sad story, if you've played the game, you're kind of thrown into, you have to kind of attack to get away from your abusive mother, and you're thrown into the basement, and you're trying to escape the basement, and to do that, you have to kind of go through different levels of the basement to escape. Every time you restart, right? However, with games like Hades, you can like unlock or purchase things outside of the run. So you at some point, let's say with Hades, you can buy things that are permanent, or you can find things that are permanent, and then that will help you with the run. But essentially, every time you start a run, you're like, got no cash, you got a set amount of life, and that's it. But you can, over time, kind of grinding or just kind of doing runs, you can accrue things, or you'll run into like stores and buy stuff. And you can also increase your health. You can unlock new weapons. You can unlock abilities that you can kind of like, you have like objects or artifacts that you can, before you set out on a quote unquote run, you can equip that will help you in some way. And so there are ways to kind of, I think maybe what you're saying is like modern roguelike games, there are ways that make it a little bit easier, but it's still the roguelike to where permadeath or reset. And every map, every level, every monster, everything's kind of procedurally generated or randomly generated. So what is the game you're talking about?
The one that I like played through all the way through, that I spent quite a long time in. I just had to look it up because I thought it was like 2010s, and I was right. It was about like 2012, 2013. There's basically like this kind of like science fiction, like ship-based combat game called FTL, like Faster Than Light. And the idea, I mean, the conceit is basically that you are the ship, and you have like a small crew, and your goal is to I think like reconnect with like the Federation, which is several jumps like or waypoints like away from where you are. And like as you, it's a hardcore question mark. I guess I guess now as I experience some like truly hardcore resource management games, I have to like question this, but like it's a resource management game, and that basically like as you navigate through space, you burn fuel, you burn these things called like beacons, you encounter hostile forces, and you have to navigate your way through. Successful completion of objectives, of course, gives you more resources with which to do things. How you assemble your crew, it is whatever. The number of the route you must take to kind of join the Federation is random, and the opponents that you encounter along the way are random, and there's no restart, right? So like in the event that your ship is defeated or destroyed, or you run out of resources and you drift into the emptiness of space.
So every trek is completely random and different.
Yeah, and as I think about it, that resource management may be more than the permadeath for FTL, because I didn't really I don't identify with an individual in like this particular game. Like it is the ship, right? My goal is I contain multitudes, but what I really like about this kind of style of game, which I think does appeal to those who like resource management, and I do, is that. Now what sucks is that you can have you can start with a couple of like unfortunately lucky or unlucky like jumps early in the game, and you're pretty fucked unless you're incredibly clever and are able to like overcome kind of like the big constraints or the foes that you encounter. But yeah, so it's just this kind of like nice little like FTL game, and there is a space combat, spacefaring game, and it appeals to my my enjoyment of science fiction, and it has like a concise narrative, so that you can, I don't know, the story you tell is your own as you go, which might be another factor of like what roguelike means, right? Because I guess with the idea of like random map generation, there's only so much controlled narrative that the game designer can infuse the game with. And so this kind of dovetails maybe a little bit with like our last episode, in which we're talking about journaling RPGs and things of that sort, where the story emerges from the play as opposed to you experiencing a story. A well-designed war game is hard to make. But if you've listened to the show for any length of time, you know we stand Hell Let Loose, this realistic, immersive World War II shooter that not only requires that you play well, but that your squad plays well together. And well with other squads. There's no HUD, there are no scopes, one shot and you're down if you can't fortify, flank, and suppress as a team, you lose. And because of that, in my opinion, Hell Let Loose deserves many game awards. If that rings true and you want to help the show, consider downloading it through Gamersgate. No, not that Gamersgate. The Gamersgate that came before the controversy that hijacked the name. Gamersgate is the world's largest online store for PC and Mac games, more than 4,500 of them. And if you download Hell Let Loose or another game through designthinkinggames.com/Gamersgate, it'll help us keep the lights on. I'll see you on the beach.
So talking about like how like roguelike has kind of different meanings to different people, but the style has things that are like reset or permadeath, and then procedurally or randomly generated, and then resource management. I think what we see a lot of is, what excites me is kind of like that genre when it's attached or combined with another genre. And so I don't know if you've ever heard of the game Crypt of the Necrodancer. Have you?
No, but that sounds like an old school D&D module. I'm looking it up now.
Yeah. It does sound like, what is the Tomb of Horrors, the very first Gygax, Dungeons and Dragons kind of thing. I mean, it definitely has that feel like, oh yeah, Crypt of the Necrodancer. Wow. So essentially it is, you're familiar with roguelike games. There are also, I don't know if you're like a lot of rhythm games, which are like...
Oh, I do. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, so there's like Bit.trip runner and beat runner, and and then there's Guitar Hero and a lot of other things to where it's a rhythm-based kind of game.
100%.
But so they've basically combined, Crypt of the Necrodancer combines a roguelike kind of procedurally generated dungeons and monsters with a rhythm game. And so essentially, I would highly recommend it. Like it's super cheap and it's an indie game, but you can only move, or like you not only move, but you want to move and on the beat. And so it becomes very strategic to where you are going like left, and then as a monster comes up, you have to dodge them and you have to attack them on the beat.
Oh, that's dope.
And then move away. And even as you like dig through the tunnels or uncover chests or like unlock different things, you literally are doing it through rhythm. And there are parts to where the music speed and tempo increases to where you have to move faster, or maybe you get hit by a monster and it slows you down. But the longer you stay on beat, the more of a damage kind of buff you get.
Oh, that's cool.
Kind of... Yeah, it has a lot of really cool mechanics, and I think there's even, I think there are spin-off games of it. But the thing that I like about it is like when you go down into the tomb, and let's say you fail, if you come back and you did have some gold and you did have some diamonds or stuff, there is like a town that you can kind of buy like a better shield in, or a better weapon, or like more health or whatever. And so then when you go in your next kind of run or dungeon crawl, it actually, like I was saying with Hades, like you can kind of give yourself buffs and equipment and stuff outside of the roguelike procedurally generated dungeon, which increases your chance of being successful, as well as, enjoying kind of the gameplay a little bit more.
Yeah, that sounds like a blast.
And I believe that Crypt of Necrodancer has they partnered with Nintendo at some point and Zelda, and they actually came out with Cadence of Hyrule. And so Cadence of Hyrule is literally like a Zelda game, but it is the same mechanics where you can only move and attack and fight bosses in rhythm and move around. Same kind of tempo, increase, decrease, or whatever. And the character from Crypt of the Necrodancer teams up with Link and Zelda in it. And so I think her name is Cadence. I apologize for that. Yeah, her name is Cadence, and I think she, which is kind of interesting for the rhythm thing. Yeah. But Cadence joins Link and Zelda in the Cadence of Hyrule. So it's definitely worth checking out. It's super fun, and it's also kind of challenging.
What makes it like so how does like the roguelike part really like complement the rhythm based part? Generally as long as you enjoy the loop, that is the aspect of the repeatable gameplay, right? Or the run. Yeah, there we go. That roguelikes are replayable like almost imminently, because like the levels are
100%. Yeah, 100%. I think there's this the thing that I think with roguelike games that are the appeal is, when I am playing a Mario game or a Zelda game or whatever game, I know that when I get to this point in the 3D map, there's a guy hiding behind this crate. Or if I do 3 jumps and an extended jump on the side-scrolling game, I know the monsters that are on the screen. So you can kind of, to some degree, memorize it. And that's kind of the appeal and the difficulty of Cuphead, right? Because Cuphead is just like, you have to play it perfect and it's memorization. Cuphead's appeal is that you can memorize and you just have to get it perfect. It's a perfect run, right? That is completely off the table with a roguelike game, because in a game that is like Crypt of the Necrodancer, every level's different. Every map is different. The monsters that populate it are different. Now you can think like, oh, when I encounter this type of snake, I have to block then attack. Or when I encounter this, kind of skeletal knight, I have to go around him and attack him from the back. I mean, you can think about how to deal with specific enemies, right? And you can think about like, okay, I encounter this type of wall, I can dig through it, or this is like something that requires a bomb, but everything is random. And so the skill is not in the memorization of the board and the jumping. So, like when you see like the people who beat Super Mario Brothers 3 in like under 2 minutes because they epically run because they memorize it. Yeah. This is, I think the appeal for roguelike games is that it is random every single time in every way. Yeah. And so it really comes down to like, well, what are you testing? Are you testing memorization, or can you deal with problems on the fly that are generated for you? And every run or loop or whatever you want to call it, challenges you. And you may suck really bad and not even get past the second level, or maybe one time you do so great you can beat the game, or get through all the levels or the boss fights. So I think that's the appeal. But with Crypt of Necrodancer, like the fact that it's put to music, it makes it just make you do it quicker and makes you do it on beat and makes it a little bit more enjoyable.
Yeah, I feel like the there's something like really appealing to like the potential of like aggressive Guitar Hero and like fighting enemies, and I love the idea. I might see if I can find this on Steam, because I love the idea. I love the idea of attacking on rhythm. There are games like Assassin's Creed which are, without music, rhythm-based combat or something like that. But something like this seems like just incredibly fun and nostalgic.
Design Thinking Games is an affiliate of Space Engineers. Space Engineers is a sandbox game about engineering, construction, exploration, and survival in space and on planets. To find out more about Space Engineers or its new DLC, Warfare 2, go to designthinkinggames.com/Space Engineers, or just go to our website and click on the banner. As listeners who've, tuned into the last season of the podcast know, you challenged me last year because Mass Effect Legendary Edition came out. 3 epic games, very sci-fi narrative-based, amazing games. And you kind of gave me the season to complete it, all 3, which I did. And then
in hindsight, it almost doesn't seem fair, because potentially, like, I gave you like a 100-hour assignment. It's like, oh man, like in hindsight, that's a lot of game to punish, to pummel through, right? Even on the story modes. Like I was so like when you're like, oh man, I did it, and I was like, oh shit, really? Like I almost didn't expect it.
Yeah, but I also put it in story mode and super easy combat. And so like every boss encounter was just like, okay, this is light. And I do that with a lot of games. The game has to be rare for me not to do something like that. Yeah. But like even like Horizon or Zero Dawn or Forbidden West, I put those on easy as well, because it's like, man, I'm just here to have fun. I'm not really looking to have grueling combat. But having said that, there is a phenomenal roguelike hybrid game that I love. I just got exposed to in the last couple years. And I don't know if you've heard of it. And that's the one that I want to slap you with the gauntlet across the face for you to try. And the game is called Moonlighter. Have you ever heard of Moonlighter?
Moonlighter is an action RPG with roguelike.
So I'm assuming you're Googling it and you haven't,
I just
heard of
pulled it
then.
up on Steam. No, I've never heard of this.
Okay, so my plug, which is not going to spoil anything for you, but by the end of this season, and probably not, it won't take the whole season, but by the end of this season, that is the game that I want you to beat. I think the player experience is phenomenal on it. It's roguelike. But to give you a hint that doesn't like spoil anything, you are by day a person who runs a shop in like a rundown town.
Yeah.
And at night, you go into dungeons, like literally Legend of Zelda 1 style, and harvest parts of monsters and treasures and equipment and artifacts and whatever. And then you put that in your shop to sell.
Oh, that's crazy.
And so it has this whole economics principle to it, combined with roguelike. But then also there's a third piece that I would say too, which is kind of a community or social development piece to it. So as you are in this abandoned town and you've been kind of given this, you've inherited this rundown store, you are the crazy shopkeeper who goes into the dungeons to fight monsters and get treasure so you can sell things in town. How you sell things is very much by the laws of economics, like supply and demand, what people need and what people are looking for. And there are certain things that you can charge crazy price for. But if you actually sell too much of the same product, you are going to run your own price down. But the other side of that twofold is the social kind of economics piece and social good piece, which is you're slowly revitalizing this town with your shop and your business by reinvesting into the town. And what you find out through the dungeons and through the games to find out really what really is going on will blow your mind. So
is there like a real, there's like a story, like an encapsulating story to this?
Oh yeah, there is a whole thing, like what you find out. So I don't want to ruin anything.
Yeah. I'll stop. Yeah.
But there is definitely story about you and your shop, and you've inherited it, and you know you're in a town that has like near caves or mines that have like monsters and treasures, and so adventurers do try to go into this mine to like find its treasures and survive. But you are doing that as a shopkeeper to sell, to make profit. But then you're also using that money to reinvest into your town, to grow your town. It is amazing. It is so fulfilling and it is fun. And it is a not punishing roguelike game because two things. One, there are things that you can do outside of the game that help you. So every time you kind of delve into the dungeons, so to speak, you can kind of put on a better weapon or a better armor. You can better equip yourself, right? But then the fact that there's a whole e-commerce, not e-commerce, but a commerce side of it in the game where you're selling and pricing and supply and demand, but then you're also revitalizing the town. I mean, that is what really made me enjoy it. Like, very phenomenal game. I highly suggest it if you've never played Moonlighter. Please do so. And that is the challenge that I give you, Mike, for this season 2 of Design Thinking Games. Beat Moonlighter, and we'll talk about it.
Let's make a prediction here.
Okay.
So I just bought it, and I'm downloading it now.
Oh my God, already. All in.
I'm in it. I got the extended edition, which was only like $4 more. So cool. And when I look at Moonlighter, I feel a sense of dread. like
yeah. So I don't know.
Yeah.
Oh no! I will tell you. Like, I know hard. I mean, I know Dead by Daylight. I know Cuphead. I know, I know Dark Souls and Sekiro. And I am not like brutal punishing for brutal punishing's sake. If there's no chance of progress, I will say this game, Moonlighter, is not difficult. You can definitely beat it. It's super fun, and there's so many different parts of the game that are enjoyable.
This is definitely a genre that I don't play a lot of. And so what I'm going to try to do is, like, in subsequent episodes, maybe we'll have the Moonlighter moment. And I can
Moonlighter update. Yeah.
like where I am and how it's going. I'm really excited to kind of like experience this a little bit more because, like I said, like my experience with roguelike is really more like in the games that stress the permadeath, like, you know, that's what they're really like paying attention to.
If I can do all 3 Mass Effects, dude, you can do Moonlighter. You can do Moonlighter. And I think I highly suspect that it will tickle the product designer in you.
Yeah.
It'll harken back to some old school gaming, and it's really beautifully, like, if you are a fan of pixel art, like, it's a beautifully rendered pixel art. So I will be surprised if you just rage quit it. So I am comfortable in what, you know, we've talked about in previous episodes and seasons about what totally you are against in gaming, and I think you will be fine with this.
Awesome. All right. Well, I think that is our cue. So next episode, should you all choose to join us, please do. We will talk about something and see how my adventure with Moonlighter is going. Will I be howling? Perhaps. Oh my God. If Design Thinking Games is your cup of tea, please consider supporting us on Patreon at patreon.com/designthinkinggames, where you can get episodes just like this a whole week early without ads. Of course, if you like our ad reads, we put a lot of work into making good ad reads. Just be sure you subscribe on your podcatcher of choice, Spotify, Apple, Google Play, Overcast, your cup of tea. But wherever it is, be sure you star, heart, or favorite it as you can. And if you could be so kind as to leave us a nice review, that will help shine the algorithm favorably upon us. We release frequently. We're on social media sometimes. And recently we've been like posting a little bit to TikTok. Here I am, just a delightful old shopkeep, la-di-da-di-da, behind the desk with wooden floors, a little patina of dust. I've just turned the close sign as the last customer walked out. It goes ding, ding, ding as the door closes. What the fuck is happening here on Design Thinking Games? I'm not sure. And then I gaze out, thankfully, at the passers-by in town, grateful to be here. But then the clouds part, and what is it that I see? A full moon!
Thank you for listening to the Design Thinking Games podcast. You only have so much time, and it means a lot you shared it with us. To connect with your hosts, Michael or Tim, visit Design Thinking Games on TikTok, Twitch, and Twitter. DMs are open. You can also check out designthinkinggames.com, where you can request topics, ask questions, or see what else is going on. Until next time, game on.